Hi friends, welcome to OFA Studies YouTube channel. This is part 5 in PySpark playlist. In this video, we are going to discuss about how we can write JSON files into a data frame using PySpark. So in our past videos of the PySpark playlist, we have discussed about what is PySpark, how to read a CSV file into a data frame, and also how to write the data frame as a CSV file. All those things we have discussed, right? So this video is dedicated to reading content from CSV file into a data frame using PySpark. Please watch my previous videos to get most of these videos. Why? Because all my videos are in a sequence order inside a playlist. Now let's jump onto this video. So the main agenda is we are going to discuss how we can read the JSON file. It can be a single JSON file if you want to read multiple JSON files into data frame, or all the JSON files from a directory into a PySpark data frame. Then how to do that? That is one thing. And second thing is, along the same lines, your JSON can be as a single line or it can be a multi-line JSON inside a file. So how to read those kind of JSON files also into a data frame using PySpark. So now let's try to understand this first, how it will actually happen. So if you have seen my previous video, there is something called reader object, which is from data frame reader class inside a PySpark that will help you to read a CSV file. The same way, this reader object contains a method called JSON that will help you to read the content from the JSON file as well. So in my past videos, I have explained how to use a help function to see the documentation of anything, right? The same way, you can see the documentation of this JSON method also. I will be not going very in detail this time. I will be very I will just show you as a high level, but you try to watch my previous videos to see how that help function we have to use to know what is the exact documentation of a class, or what are the existing properties and methods in a class and everything in the PySpark. So now here, let's try to create a new notebook first, and let's name it like read JSON into data frame df. Okay, so I am attaching this cluster here with my notebook. Let me hit create button to create this notebook here. Okay, notebook got created. Let me close this dialog here, and here, so Spark will give you a Spark session object. This you know from my previous videos. Please watch that if you are not sensing. On the up of that Spark, there is a property called read that will give you a object of data frame reader class. So let's try to use a help function on top of this spark.read property, and let me hit shift enter to execute this code and to practically show you that. See, this read is a object of data frame reader class. You can see. So that is what it is, and this class contains methods to read. See, CSV method. This is what we have discussed in our previous videos, that helps you to read a CSV data. Similarly, if I scroll down, there is a method called JSON that will help you to read the content from a JSON file. You can see here, right? So this is the documentation of that particular JSON method. So on top of this read property that will give object of data frame reader class, we have something called JSON method that will help you to read content from a JSON file. You can use help function on top of this JSON method as well to see what kind of parameters available inside a function for which you need to pass some data depending upon your requirement. And if you see this documentation below, it will clearly explains, for example, this path parameter, whatever you are seeing here, to which you can supply a string or a list of strings as a path. That means wherever your file exists, that file location you have to pass as a path in a string format actually. That means in a string data type. Not only that, all other data types or all other parameters whatever you are seeing here, all these parameters explanation will be available at this link as a documentation. So you can go through the documentations and then you can understand what kind of data I should pass into what kind of parameter when I am using a JSON function. So I will be not going the details, so you guys can do it. And one important property available or parameter available inside a JSON function, that is multi-line. So this parameter will take true or false as a values. So when you say true, that means your JSON data is in multi-line in your file. If it is false, that means if your JSON data is not multi-line. So according to the data availability in a JSON file, you need to set the value for this property. I will show you that practically. Okay, let me go to my presentation once again. So read.json method will be used to read a content from a JSON file. Not only that, on top of just read object, you have something called format function, to which you can specify the format of the file and then use a load function along with the path to read the content that file from that file. So here in the format, if I supply CSV, then it is going to read a CSV file. Here if I supply JSON, then it is going to read a JSON file. If it is a Parquet, you can set it as a Parquet. So usually I prefer using these kind of functions which explicitly tells me like this is going to read a JSON file or a CSV file or a Parquet file. The function name itself will give you, but anything is good. You can use either this kind of format or this kind of format. So you can try this kind of format by yourself. I will be explaining this one. So now let me do one thing. Let me explain you. Let me go to my desktop, and on my desktop I have one folder. In that folder I have some JSON data. See, there is something called employees.json file. Let me double click and open this file. You see here we have two JSON objects, id1, id2. So let's assume this is a JSON file I have and I want to read this data into data frame. How to do that? So let me do one thing. This is in this location in my local, right? Let me upload this file into Databricks file system and then write my code on top of that file. So let me go back to browser, and here let me navigate to data menu, dbfs, file store. Under file store there is something called data. So here let me hit this upload button and let me click here, and then it is opening a dialog of my local file explorer, and let me navigate to here. So there is something called sample files folder, inside which there is a JSON folder. So this is where I have that employees.json file. Let me click open to open this file. That means I loaded this file into my Databricks file system, and let me copy path of that file from here. In these examples I am using data from my Databricks file system, but in real time you can take this file, can be in a data lake storage gen 2, or it can be in a blob storage, it can be anywhere, right? So if you have seen my Python, that means in my Synapse or Databricks playlist, you know how to read content from the external storages. So you can try that code as well. But for now, let me take the file from here, because my intention is not to explain how to read content from external storage. My intention is to explain you how to read a JSON file. So from where I am doing that, that doesn't matter actually in this case. So please explore my Databricks and Synapse playlist for that. So let me go here, and here let me use spark dot control space to get a intelligence, read dot again control space to get a intelligence. You see there is something called JSON function that takes path as a parameter, schema as a parameter. There are a lot others. I will be discussing this schema parameter also in this video. Let's wait for it. So let me go to this JSON function and control space. There is a path parameter. To this path parameter, I am giving my JSON file path, and this entire code is going to return a data frame. So let me save this into a data frame variable called df, and here below that, on top of the data frame, there is something called print schema function that gives the schema of the data frame. And also let me use this show function to see the data from the data frame. Let me hit shift enter to execute this shell now. You can see command is executing here. In a couple of seconds we can see a data frame will get created, and the schema of the data frame, you can see gender column, id column, name column, salary column, and it says gender as a string, id as a long type, name as a string, salary as a long type. Why that is happening? If you see here the JSON, see id value is not in a double quotes, that means it is an integer. So by default what this code will do, it will infer the schema based upon type of data you have inside a JSON file. It will try to infer that schema actually. So infer schema means based upon the data availability you predict the data type of it. So by default Python or PySpark will infer the schema for the integers as long actually. Okay, long is also like a big integer, you can think like that, right? But if you want to make sure explicitly this id column as an integer type only, that also you can do. When you are reading a content using this code, you can supply something called schema parameter value also, where you will define your own schema, because you know the schema ahead. So you are creating a schema ahead and supplying that schema also into JSON function to explicitly enforce that schema onto the data frame. We will discuss that also in just a bit. So the main thing to observe here is, using this JSON function, I was able to read the schema. I was able to read the data from this employees.json file successfully, right? Not only that, if I go back to presentation, not only this kind, so I explained with this kind of syntax, right? With this kind of syntax, okay? So you can use this kind of syntax also, as I said, format and then load function. This you guys can try by your own. Now let me say, what if my JSON is in multi-line? What I mean by that? So let me go here. So this is the JSON what we just now tried, and here the JSON objects are not multi-line, right? Here it is a single line. Now if I go back to my folder, there is something called employees.ml.json file. If I double click and open this JSON file, let's wait for this JSON file to load here. You can see this is the file, and if you see here my JSON objects are multi-line. So what if my data in JSON is in this format, then how to read content in this case? So let me do one thing. Let me upload this JSON file into my data frame file system, and then let's try to load a data frame from that content. So let me go back to browser, and here let me go to data menu, dvfs, that means Databricks file system, and here let me hit this upload button, click this drop files to upload, and this is the file employees aml, that means multiline.json. So let me hit open to load that file, and let me click done, and here let's copy the path of this file. Let me copy this. Let me go back to my code here this time, and this time what I am going to do here, let me paste this code, and I am not explicitly passing something into a multi-line parameter of the JSON function. That means by default multi-line option will be set as false. If you see the presentation, that is what I said. By default the value for the multi-line option is set as false. So now let's see what will happen. Let me hit shift enter to execute this cell, and if you say, it says corrupted record, that means the JSON is not in a proper format. According to me, it's corrupted. Why? Because here to the JSON function I am saying multi-line is false. That means there is no multi-line. That's what I said to my function, but there are multiple lines, so system is predicting it as a incorrect or corrupted record. That's why you see this error. So to avoid this error, since my data is multi-line, use this multi-line parameter inside a JSON function and set a value for this as true. Now let me hit shift enter and see what will happen. Now this should able to read the content correctly, and you can see it is able to, and also it is printing the schema too along with the data as well successfully. So if depending upon the data how you have inside your JSON, if it is like this, then use multi-line parameter as a true. If it is like this, then no need. That means multi-line parameter value is false. So depending upon how your JSON data is there, you have to use that multi-line option inside a JSON function. Let's go back to our presentation. So far we have seen indirectly like how to read a content from a JSON, that is like from a single JSON file. So what if I have multiple JSON files in a different locations, I want to read data from all that JSON files as a single data frame, then how to do that? So for that you need to use the path of that particular JSON files as a list of string values, like how you are seeing this example. Let me practically show you this as well. So let me go back here, let me go back to my browser. Let me go back to my folder first. So here I have two files. There is something called employees1.json file, employees2.json file. If I open both these files, employees1.json file has the same schema like ID, name, gender, salary, not multi-line JSON, single line JSON. And if I open employees2.json file, similar schema but ID 3 and 4. So let's assume my same kind of data or say shape of data is available in multiple JSON files. Now since the data is and the schema is same in all the JSON files, I want to read that all content as a single data frame from multiple JSON files. Will it possible? If yes, then how? So yes, it is possible. Let me practically show you that. Let me upload this employees1.json file and employees2.json file onto my Databricks file system first. Let me go to data menu, dbfs, and here under data menu, let me hit this upload button and click this drop files to upload. Let me upload employees1.json file into this folder. Okay, so let me hit OK. So under data folder I have employees1.json file. Let me copy this path. Okay, I copied this path, and then let me paste this path on somewhere here. So let me keep it here for now, and then let me go to my data menu once again, and dbfs file system file store. And this time what I will be doing, under data1 folder I will be uploading that employees2.json file. So let me select employees2.json file here. Let me hit done. So employees2.json file here. Let me copy this path too. So I have copied this path too, and now let me keep this path here. So from these two locations I want to read the JSON data as a single data frame. So will that possible? Yes. So let me copy this path. How to do that I will show you. For this path parameter, let's supply a list, and inside a list I will be using all the paths as a comma separator, like separate items. So this is one path, and now let me let me take the second item as well. So let me copy this, and then here let me supply the second value as well. And there is no multi-line, so let me remove this parameter. We no need that. We have already understood how that multi-line parameter affects depending upon the shape of the data. So now let me execute this cell and see what will happen. See, my command executed successfully. I can see employee is 1 2 3 4 everything. So make sure you supply your paths as a list of values to the path parameter to read content from multiple locations or multiple files. So this is how we can do that. And if I go back to presentation, what if I want to read all the JSON files from a given folder? Then you can use this star.json. This is like wildcard. What I am trying to say here is, under resources folder, take all the files. Star means all the files. It can be any name which ends with .json extension. So that is what I am trying to do here. Let's try to practically see this. Will it work or not? So let me go back to my browser, and here let me go back to my data menu. Under dbfs file system, under file store, under data menu, what I will be doing it here is, okay, let me delete this. I don't want this employee ml.json file, and also let me delete this employees.json file as well. So right now I have here only employees1.json file under data folder. So let me upload employees2.json file as well. So you know that already I have shown employee1.json file and employee2.json file both has a similar schema, similar data, but employee1.json file contains employee IDs 1 and 2, and employee2.json file contains employee IDs 3 and 4. So if you see this, that is what we have, right? Employees1.json file has 2 employees, employee2 also has a 2 employees, but IDs are different. So now these two files are in a same folder called data. So from this folder I want to read all the JSON files. Let me practically show you that. So as I said, so if I go back here, inside this path you can use a string path only. Let me remove this list syntax whatever I have here, and don't specify the file name directly. So name can be anything. So instead of name I will simply use a star, but it should end with JSON. That's what I am trying to do. Now if I execute this code, it should read both the CSV files, and see, it is showing all the 4 rows clearly, right? So you need to use this wildcard syntax to read content from all JSON files actually. So let's go back to presentation. I hope you got that as well. And one last thing what we have to discuss is, as I said at the starting, if you see here, my data frame getting gender as a string type, ID as a long type, and salary is also as a long type. So I don't want this long type of data type for my ID column and salary column. I want it only integer type, because these are small numbers, so integer is also work fine here. So we can explicitly force the schema on the data frame or not while reading a JSON. Yes, we can do that. So that's what we are going to discuss now. So now what I will be doing it here, as I said, there is something called schema parameter to which you need to supply your schema. So let me do one thing. So there is something called from PySpark dot SQL dot types module. Let me import all the modules here. So when I hit control space, you can see all these data types are there. Okay, so let me say star, that means import all the modules. And here after that, so for now let me hit the shift enter button to execute this command. Okay, there is something wrong. Okay, we are using this parameter, right? So let me remove this and let me hit shift enter to execute this cell. Why I am executing it? To make sure this import happens successfully. Once we get it, now the intelligence will work actually. So usually after the import, if you type the intelligence, it will work. See, structure type, I am going to create a structure type. The schema parameter will take a structure type. If you are not sure, you can see the documentation or previous videos of mine. That means in part 3 and 4 I have explained that clearly. And on top of that, there is something called add function. To this add function, field parameter will take the name of the property or column. So I want one column name like id column. Then for the id column, I want a data type should be like a string type. Sorry, id is integer type, right? So like integer type. So let me use that. Then again add function, then to the field function, sorry, field parameter. So let me supply name. For name column, I want data type to be string type. So let me use the string type here. Okay, then again add, then field property, then maybe gender column. For the gender column, I want a data type column to be string type. So let me use string type here as well. Then dot, again add function, then there is a field called salary. So SALARY, salary column. Then the data type of this column I want to be like integer type. So let me use the integer type here. So now I created this structure type object, and let me store this object into a variable called schema. Now here inside this JSON function, there is a parameter called schema. So for this schema parameter, let me supply this schema variable as a data to it, so that this schema will be applied on top of this data frame when it reads the data from the JSON. So closely observe here. Now id column type is long, salary is also long. Now let me execute this cell and what will happen? Great. See, command executed successfully. But now if you see, id column is an integer type, salary column is an integer type. Why? Because I enforced my schema on top of my data frame while I am reading the data. So that's how you can enforce your schema on top of the data frame when you are reading data from a JSON file. So this is schema property, and here the structure type of object you should create it. So that's it in this video. I hope you got an idea like how to read a content from a JSON file. It can be a single file, it can be a multiple files, or it can be all files in some specific directory. So thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon to get the notification whenever I add videos. Thank you so much.